There is an hour that comes when the house has finally gone quiet. The dishes are done. The doors are locked. Whatever needed answering today has been answered, or has been left unanswered, and will wait. And you lie here in the dark, and the quiet that you wanted all day is suddenly the loudest thing in the room. For a lot of people, this is the hour when a certain thought arrives. Not a dramatic thought, not a crisis, just a quiet awareness settling over you like a change in the weather. The awareness that time has been passing, that it has been passing for a long while now, that the years behind you are more solid, more real than the years ahead, and that somewhere along the way the balance quietly tipped. If that thought has ever found you here, in the dark, you are not doing anything wrong. You are simply awake and honest and alone with something most of us spend the daylight hours carefully not looking at. And tonight, gently, without any hurry, we're going to look at it together. Not to solve it. It does not need solving, only to sit with it and to let it soften, so that you can rest. We are going to keep company tonight with a man named Irvin Yalom. He is a psychiatrist, one who spent more than half a century in a quiet room, sitting across from people who were frightened or grieving or simply lost, and helping them face the very thing that visits you in this hour. He is now himself an old man, and he has written plainly and without flinching about what it is to grow old and to know that the road is shorter than it was. He is in many ways the best possible company for a night like this, because he is not afraid of the thought that frightens you. He has looked at it for a lifetime, and what he found on the other side of it was not terror, it was something closer to peace. So let your shoulders come down from where they have been holding all day. Let the pillow take the full weight of your head. There is nothing to decide tonight. There is nothing to finish. There is only this voice, and the dark and the slow, patient work of letting the day be over. Chapter 2. The question that waits until dark. It is a strange thing how a question can wait for you. All day it hides. You are busy, and there are people to answer and tasks to complete, and the question is patient. It knows it does not need the daylight. It knows that eventually the house will go quiet, and you will lie down, and there will be nothing left between you and it. And so it waits until dark. The question is not always the same, but underneath it is usually one question wearing different clothes. Sometimes it comes as, where did the time go? Sometimes as, is this all it was going to be? Sometimes it does not even form into words. It is just a weight, a pressure behind the breastbone, a sense that something enormous is standing just outside the edge of your attention, and that if you turn to look at it directly, you might not be able to bear it. Yalom spent his career learning that this weight is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something is deeply right. It means you are a creature who knows. Most of what lives on this earth does not know. The animal in the field does not lie awake counting its remaining summers. Only we do that. Only we carry all our lives the strange and heavy knowledge that we are here for a while and then we are not. Yalom liked to say that this knowledge is the price of admission for a human mind. It is the tax we pay for being able to love and plan and remember and hope. The same mind that lets you cherish your children is the mind that knows you will one day have to leave them. You cannot have the one without the other. So when the question comes tonight, try to meet it a little differently than usual, not as an intruder, as an old companion. It has been with you your whole life, this awareness. It was with you when you were young and it seemed like a rumor about someone else. It is with you now when it has grown more familiar. It is not here to torment you. It is here because you are awake and alive and paying attention. And there is a kind of dignity in that, even at this hour. Especially at this hour. Let the question be in the room. You do not have to answer it. You only have to let it be here, the way you would let an old friend sit quietly beside your bed, asking nothing, simply keeping you company until you sleep. Chapter 3. A doctor who sat with the dying. Let me tell you a little about the man whose company we are keeping. Irvin Yalom trained as a psychiatrist in the middle of the last century, at a time when his profession was mostly interested in symptoms and diagnoses, in naming what was wrong with a person and prescribing something to quiet it. And Yalom quietly came to believe that this missed the deepest part of the trouble. Because when he actually sat with people, hour after hour, year after year, he found that underneath the surface complaints there was very often something older and larger at work. A person would come in worried about their marriage, or their work, or a fear they could not explain, and if you listened long enough and gently enough, you would find, down at the bottom, the great human facts: that we die, that we are free and therefore responsible, that we are, in the end, alone inside our own experience, and that the universe does not hand us a meaning, but leaves us to find one. Yalom came to believe that a great deal of human suffering is what happens when we try and fail to keep these facts out of the room. So he did something unusual. He turned toward them. He spent years working with people who were dying, with those who had received a diagnosis that put a horizon on their lives. You might think that this would be the grimmest work imaginable, and Yalom found, to his lasting surprise, that it was often the opposite. He found that people who were forced to look directly at the end of their lives frequently underwent a profound change. Priorities rearranged themselves, trivial worries fell away. What mattered became suddenly, almost violently clear. People described feeling more alive in the shadow of the end than they had felt in all the busy, distracted years before it. This is a strange and important discovery, and we will return to it more than once tonight, so let it settle in gently now. The awareness that so frightens you in this hour, the awareness of time running out, is the very same awareness that, handled rightly, can wake a person all the way up. It is not only a source of dread, it is also, Yalom insisted, a source of the deepest kind of living. The trick, and it is the work of a lifetime, is to let the awareness in without letting it crush you. To keep the window open a crack so that the truth can teach you without letting the whole cold night pour in. You do not have to do any of that work tonight. Tonight you only have to lie here and know that the man keeping you company is not afraid of the dark, because he has spent his life in it and he has seen what grows there. Rest in that. You are in steady hands. Chapter 4. Why we feel time only when it is nearly gone. Have you noticed how little we feel time when we have a great deal of it? A child does not lie awake mourning the passing of the years. To a child, a single summer is nearly endless, and the idea of being old is a kind of fairy tale about strangers. Time, when there is a great ocean of it, is almost invisible. It is the water the fish does not see. And then, slowly, something changes. It does not announce itself. There is no particular birthday where it happens. But at some point, you begin to feel the current. You begin to notice that the years, which once seemed to arrive one at a time with great ceremony, now seem to go by in bundles. A decade closes, and you can hardly account for it. People who were young are suddenly not. And you find that you have started, without deciding to measure time from the far end. Not how long since I was born, but how long until. Yalom understood that this shift is one of the quiet turning points of a life. It is the moment the finitude of things stops being an abstraction and becomes a felt fact, something you know in the body and not only in the mind. And it very often arrives, as it may be arriving for you, in the dark, in the quiet, when there is nothing to distract you from the simple sensation of time moving through you like breath. Here is something worth knowing, though, before the feeling turns heavy. The reason you feel time now, when you did not before, is not that your life is ending, it is that your life has accumulated. You feel the weight of time precisely because you have gathered so much of it. All those years you cannot fully account for were not empty. They were full. Full of mornings and conversations and small kindnesses and hard-won lessons and faces you loved. The sense of a great deal of time having passed is really the sense of a great deal of life having been lived. The heaviness you feel is the heaviness of a full vessel, not an empty one. So when the current of time makes itself felt tonight, try to feel it as evidence rather than as loss. Evidence that you were here. Evidence that you paid attention, that you were marked by things, that you are a person with a history and not a blank. The very fact that time can make you ache is proof that you had something worth aching over. Let that be a strange sort of comfort as you lie here. The weight is real, but look closely at what it is made of. It is made of your life. Chapter 5. The 4 things no one escapes. Yalom had a way of organizing the deep troubles of being human, and it is worth laying it out simply because there is a kind of relief in seeing the whole map at once. He said that beneath our particular worries, there are 4 great facts that no human being escapes. He called them the ultimate concerns. We are going to spend the long, quiet middle of this night walking slowly through each one, so let me name them now, gently, the way you would name the rooms of a house before you turn out the lights. The first is death, that we are finite, that this life has an edge to it, and that we live the whole of it, knowing so. This is the fact that most often visits in the dark, and we will give it the most time and the most tenderness. The second is freedom. This sounds like a gift, and it is. But Yalom saw that it is also a weight. To be free means that there is no script handed down to us, no fixed path we are simply following. We are, to a startling degree, the authors of our own lives, which means we are responsible for them, which is a heavier thing to carry than it first appears. The third is isolation. Not loneliness in the ordinary sense, the kind cured by good company. Something deeper. The fact that no matter how close we grow to another person, there remains a gap that cannot be fully crossed. You entered this world alone, and you will leave it alone. And in between, however loved you are the only one who lives inside your own experience. And the fourth is meaning. The universe does not arrive with instructions. It does not tell us what our life is for. And so we are left with the strange task of making a meaning, or finding one, in a world that stays silent on the matter. Now, that is a serious list, and if you read it in the harsh light of noon, it might sound bleak. But Yalom did not find it bleak, and neither, I hope, will you by the end of tonight. Because he found that each of these four hard facts has, folded inside it, a gift. The knowledge of death can wake you to life. The weight of freedom is also the dignity of authorship. The gap of isolation is the very thing that makes real closeness precious. And the silence of the universe is what leaves room for you to fill your days with a meaning that is truly your own. We will find each of these gifts in turn, but not yet. For now, simply let the map be drawn. You know the shape of the house now. There is nothing in it that can hurt you tonight. Rest. Chapter 6. The first, given, that it ends. Let us turn, slowly and without fear, to the first of the great facts, that this life ends. It is the one that waits until dark, the one we have been circling since the house went quiet, and rather than keep avoiding it, we are simply going to sit down beside it, the way you might finally sit down beside a difficult relative at a long family gathering, and find that, once you are seated, they are not as fearsome as they seemed from across the room. Yalom was fond of an old image. He said that the fear of death is like the sun. You cannot look at it directly for very long. Stare straight into it, and you are dazzled, overwhelmed, forced to look away. And so most of us, most of the time, keep it at the edge of our vision. We know it is there. We feel its warmth and its weight. But we arrange our days so that we rarely have to face it head on. This is not cowardice. It is how a mind protects itself. We could not function if we walked around every moment in the full glare of our own mortality. But there is a cost to never looking at all. The thing we refuse to look at does not go away. It goes underground, and from underground it sends up strange shoots into our lives. A restlessness we cannot explain. A frantic busyness that fills every hour so that no quiet gap can open where the thought might slip in. A clutching at things and status and distraction. Yalom believed that a great deal of what troubles us is really the unlived fear of death, wearing a disguise, working on us from below because we will not let it come into the light. So here is the quiet proposal for tonight. Not to stare into the sun. We are not going to do anything so violent, but to let a little of the light in at an angle, softly, the way morning first comes to a room before the sun has cleared the rooftops. To acknowledge plainly and calmly the thing that is true, that you are a finite creature, that this will end, and to notice, as you say it here in the safety of the dark, that saying, it does not destroy you. You are still breathing. The bed still holds you. The truth was in the room all along, and naming it gently has not brought the roof down. It has, if anything, let a little of the pressure out. That is enough for now. We have opened the window a crack. Feel how the room can hold even this. Feel how you can hold even this. And let that quiet strength carry you a little further towards sleep. Chapter 7. The Wave and the Ocean. There is an image that has comforted people for a very long time, and Yalom returned to it more than once. So let us rest in it for a while tonight. Imagine a wave, far out at sea. It rises up out of the water, gathers itself, becomes for a while a distinct and particular thing, this wave and no other, with its own shape and its own crest and its own brief, glittering life. And then it moves toward the shore, and it breaks, and it is gone. If a wave could think, it might spend its whole short life in dread of that breaking. It might look ahead to the shore and feel only terror at its own ending. But the wave was never separate from the ocean. It rose up out of the water, and it returns to the water, and the water is not diminished. The wave was a way the ocean had of being for a while in that particular place, that particular shape. Its rising and its falling are both the ocean moving. Nothing that made the wave is lost when the wave subsides. It simply stops being gathered into that one form and rejoins the great body it never actually left. Now, images are only images, and this one does not answer every question, and I am not going to pretend that it dissolves the whole weight of the matter. But there is something in it worth holding in the dark. You did not come from nowhere. You rose up out of a world that was here long before you, out of a long chain of living things, out of the same material that makes the stars and the sea and every other person who has ever lain awake at night as you are lying now. You are, in a real and not merely poetic sense, a way the universe has of being, for a while, in this particular place, this particular shape. And whatever is true of the ending, it is at least true that the great body you came from is not diminished by your rising and will not be diminished by your subsiding. Yalom found that this kind of thinking eased people, not because it argued them out of their fear with clever logic, but because it set the small, frightened self back inside something vast and continuous. The problem, so much of the time, is that we feel like a wave that has forgotten the ocean. We feel utterly alone and utterly perishable, a tiny, separate thing flickering against the dark. And to remember the ocean, to feel yourself as part of the whole continuous body of being, is to feel the fear grow quieter, not because the fact has changed, but because you have remembered how large the thing is that holds you. Lie here and be a wave for a moment. Feel yourself rise and fall with your own breathing. And underneath the wave, holding it up, going on and on in every direction, the ocean, which is not going anywhere, and out of which you were never truly separate. Rest on that great water. It has held you all along. Chapter 8. Epicurus and the argument in the dark. Yalom had a favorite among the old philosophers, and it was not one of the fierce or gloomy ones. It was a gentle Greek named Epicurus, who lived more than 2,000 years ago, and who devoted much of his thought to exactly the fear that keeps you company tonight. Epicurus believed that most human unhappiness comes, in one way or another, from the fear of death, and that if a person could be freed from that fear, they could live an untroubled and contented life. And so he set out, calmly and carefully, to argue the fear away. Yalom loved his arguments and used them with his own patience, and we can borrow them here in the dark. The first argument is the simplest, and it is the one Epicurus is most remembered for. He said, in effect, that death is nothing to us. Consider it plainly, he said. While we are here, death is not, and when death is here, we are not. The two never actually meet. You will never be present at your own absence. There is no moment in which you will experience being dead, because experience requires a you to have it, and the whole meaning of death is that there is no longer a you there to suffer it. So the thing we dread, that state of being dead, is not a state we will ever be in a position to endure. It is not a dark room we will sit in. It is simply the end of the sitting. The second argument is just as quiet, and Yalom found it eased people even more. Epicurus asked his students to consider the vast stretch of time before they were born. All those ages, all those centuries, the whole history of the world unrolling, and you nowhere in it, not yet existing, entirely absent. Did that trouble them? Did anyone lie awake, grieving the eons before their birth? The long party they missed by arriving late? Of course not. It seems absurd even to raise it. And yet, Epicurus pointed out, the state after your life will be exactly the same as the state before it. The same absence, the same peace, the same you not being there. If the one causes no distress, why should its mirror image cause so much? We fear the darkness ahead and feel nothing about the identical darkness behind. It is a strange asymmetry, and once you notice it, some of the fear loosens its grip. I do not offer these arguments to win a debate with you in the middle of the night. Yalom knew that reasons alone rarely dissolve a deep fear, that the fear lives in an older part of us than the part that follows logic. But he also knew that the arguments do something. They give the frightened mind a place to rest. They are like handrails in a dark stairwell. You do not have to believe they will carry your whole weight forever. You only have to let your hand close around them for a moment and feel that you are not falling, that there is something steady here to hold. Let Epicurus keep watch with you for a while. He worked out these thoughts in the sunlight of a garden long ago, precisely so that someone like you, on a night like this, would have something quiet to hold. His voice comes to you across 2,000 years, and it says, simply be at ease. The thing you fear is not a place you will ever have to be. Chapter 9. Where you are, it is not. Let us stay a little longer with that first gentle argument, because there is more rest in it than one hearing gives up. Where you are, death is not. It is worth turning slowly, the way you turn a smooth stone in your hand in the dark. So much of the fear of death is really the fear of an experience. We imagine it as something that will happen to us, something we will have to go through, a terrible event we will be conscious for. We picture ourselves trapped in nothingness, aware of the dark, enduring the absence. And that picture is genuinely frightening. But look at it closely, and you see that it contains a quiet contradiction. It asks you to be present at your own non-presence. It asks you to experience the absence of all experience. And that is not something that can happen any more than you can hear silence get louder, or watch a light that has gone out. Everything you have ever feared in your life, you have feared because you would be there to feel it. Pain, loss, humiliation, grief. The dread of them is the dread of undergoing them. But the one thing about the end is that there is no undergoing. There is no one left in the room to have the bad time. The self that could suffer and the situation that would make it suffer never overlap. Yalom would sometimes put it to his patients very simply, you are afraid of something you will never meet. This does not answer the sorrow of leaving. We will come to that gently in its own time, because the leaving is real and the love that makes it hurt is real and precious. But the raw animal fear, the fear of the dark experience of being dead, that particular fear is aimed at something that does not exist. There is no dark experience of being dead. There is only the end of experiencing. And the end of experiencing cannot itself be experienced as bad, because it cannot be experienced at all. Feel how the fear, when you look right at it, has less inside it than you thought. You reach toward the terror, expecting to close your hand on something solid and cold, and you find that your hand closes on air. The frightening picture was made of impossible things stitched together. A you that is also not you. A feeling that is also the end of feeling. Let the picture come apart in the dark. Let the fear be lighter than it was, because you have seen, quietly, that there is nothing in the place where you thought the worst thing was. Where you are, it is not, and you are here. You are here right now, breathing, held by the bed, kept company by an old Greek and an old doctor, safe, rest in the here, which is the only place you have ever actually been. Chapter 10. The fear beneath the fears. Yalom noticed something over his many years in that quiet room. He noticed that people rarely walk in and say, I am afraid of dying. They walk in with other things. They say they cannot sleep. They say they feel a dread they cannot name. They say they have become obsessed with their health, or with their legacy, or with the passing of time, or with the strange panic that seizes them at odd hours. They say the days feel empty, or that they are gripped by a need to achieve something before it is too late, though they cannot say too late for what. And Yalom learned to listen underneath the words. Very often he found at the root of all these different troubles was the same buried thing. The awareness of death refused entry at the front door, coming in through the windows. He came to believe that death anxiety is like an underground river. You may never see it directly, but it feeds the wells all over your land. The sudden panic, the restlessness, the clutching, the emptiness. So many of our surface troubles are the underground river finding its way up. Why does this matter here in the dark? Because it changes how you understand your own unease. If you have felt in this hour a dread that seemed larger than any particular problem you could name, you are not malfunctioning. You are feeling the river, and there is a strange relief in that. The nameless dread has a name after all. It is not a sign that something is broken in you. It is the most human feeling there is, the feeling of a creature who knows and who has been keeping the knowledge underground and who, in the honesty of the night, feels it rising. And here is the gift Yalom found in this. When you let the underground river come up into the light, when you say plainly, I am a finite creature and I know it, and I am afraid, and that is allowed, a strange thing happens. The surface troubles often lose their grip. The restlessness eases. The clutching relaxes. Because the frantic behavior was always the disguise, always the mind trying to manage a fear it would not look at. Look at the fear directly, gently, the way we have been doing tonight, and the disguises are no longer needed. The river, once it can flow in the open, no longer has to force its way up through every crack. So let it be in the open now. Whatever unease has been with you tonight, let it simply be what it is. The natural feeling of a mortal thing on a quiet night. Nothing to fix, nothing to fight. Just the deep truth, allowed at last to be in the room with you, where it turns out to be quieter and gentler than it ever was when you kept it locked below. Feel the frantic edge come off the night. Feel yourself settle. The river is flowing in the open now, and it is only water, and it is carrying you slowly towards sleep. Chapter 11. The Life That Was Never Lived. Here is one of the deepest things Yalom came to understand, and it is worth holding carefully, because it turns a great deal of our fear on its head. He came to believe that the more fully a person had lived, the less they feared the end. And the more a person felt they had not truly lived, that they had postponed and hidden and held back, the more the end terrified them. At first, this seems backward. You might think the person with the richest, most treasured life would cling to it hardest, would dread its loss most fiercely. But Yalom found, again and again, that it was the opposite. It was the people who felt their lives were still unlived, still waiting, still on hold for some day that never came, who were seized by the sharpest terror. Because underneath their fear of death was a second, more painful fear, The fear that they would die without ever having lived, that the whole thing would end and the real living would never have begun. This is worth sitting with gently, because it points at something we can actually do something about, even now, even late. The regret that haunts people at the end is almost never that they worked too little, or played it too safe too rarely, or loved too openly. The regret is the reverse. It is for the words not said, the risks not taken, the affection held back out of pride or fear, the true self kept hidden behind a manageable one. It is regret for the life that was never lived, the one that was always going to start next year, now in the dark. This is not a call to leap up and reorganize everything, and I am not going to hand you a burden at this hour. But it is worth letting a soft question drift through the room, not to be answered tonight, only to be felt. Is there some small part of your own life that you have been keeping on hold? Some tenderness you have not expressed, some truth you have not spoken, some quiet longing you have filed away for a someday. You do not have to act on it now. You only have to notice that the fear of the end and the fear of the unlived life are close cousins, and that the cure for the second is not more time, it is more presence. It is beginning, in whatever small way, to actually live the life you have, rather than the one you keep deferring. And here is the gentle mercy of it. To begin to live more fully is not a grand and exhausting project. It can be very small. It can be a single, honest conversation. A single afternoon spent the way you actually wish to spend it. A single admission of love. Yalom saw people transform in the last months of their lives by such small acts, and described those months as the most alive of all. If it can be done then, it can be done now. There is time enough for the only thing that truly matters, which is not to add years, but to inhabit the ones you have. Let that quiet reassurance hold you. It is not too late. It was never as late as the fear insisted. Chapter 12. Awakening. When something changes a person. Yalom used a particular word for the experiences that shake a person awake. He called them awakening experiences. He meant those moments, often unwelcome, often painful, when the ordinary trance of daily life is broken and a person sees, suddenly and clearly, the true shape of their existence. A serious diagnosis can do it. So can the death of someone close, or the end of a long marriage, or a milestone birthday that lands harder than expected, or simply a sleepless night in which the great facts refuse to stay underground. We tend to think of these moments as disasters, and in one sense they are. They hurt. They tear the comfortable fabric. But Yalom watched what happened after, and he saw that these ruptures very often ushered in the most vivid and meaningful chapters of a person's life. The man who had sleepwalked through his days suddenly noticed the light on the kitchen wall. The woman who had lived for other people's approval suddenly stopped caring what they thought and began, at last, to live for herself. Things that had seemed enormous, old grievances, petty ambitions, the endless comparison with others, simply fell away, revealed as the small things they had always been. And what remained, once the trivial had burned off, was startlingly clear. the people they loved, the few things that truly mattered, the plain miracle of being alive at all. Yalom noticed that the ancient teachers had always known this, which is why so many spiritual traditions ask their students to keep death in mind, to remember it daily, not to be morbid, but to be awake. The point was never to sink into gloom. The point was that the awareness of the end is the great enemy of the trance. It is very hard to sleepwalk through a day when you truly know it is one of a finite number. The knowledge, held rightly, sharpens everything. Colors are brighter in its light. A cup of tea, a familiar voice, an ordinary evening, all of it becomes precious precisely because you know it will not always be. So consider that this very night, this sleepless, honest hour that has felt like a burden, might be a small awakening of its own, not a disaster. A window that has come open. You are lying here seeing something true that the busy daylight hides from you. And rather than a curse, it can be a gift if you let it teach you what it came to teach, which is only this, that you are alive now, that the ones you love are alive now, that this ordinary night, this breath, this quiet is not nothing. It is the whole of it, the actual substance of a life, happening right now, in the dark, with you awake inside it. Feel how the awareness, turned this way, does not weigh you down but wakes you gently to the sweetness of the plain present. And let that sweetness, rather than any fear, be the last thing in your mind as you drift. Chapter 13. The ripple you cannot see. There is an idea Yalom returned to so often that it became a kind of signature of his, and it offers a particular comfort against the fear of ending, so let us rest in it now. He called it rippling. The image is of a stone dropped into still water, and the rings that spread out from it wider and wider long after the stone itself has sunk out of sight and settled on the bottom. Yalom's point was that each of us, whether we know it or not, sends out ripples. The things we do, the way we treat people, the small kindnesses and the hard-won wisdom, these pass into others, and from those others into others still, spreading outward through time in ways we will never see and cannot trace. A teacher shapes a student, who shapes 100 students of their own. A parent's patience becomes the patience their child one day shows to a grandchild the parent never met. A single act of decency, offered and half forgotten, lodges in someone's memory and steadies them at a moment you will never know about, years after you are gone. This is not a mystical claim. It is a plain observation about how human influence actually moves through the world. Nothing you have genuinely given to another person is lost when you are gone. It has already left you. It is already traveling. It lives now in them, and it will go on from them, a widening ring on the water. Yalom found that this idea eased people who were troubled by the thought of vanishing without a trace. Because the truth is that you have already left traces beyond counting, and they are beyond your power to erase or lose. You are woven into other lives, and through them into lives not yet born. Think, in the dark, of the ripples that reached you, the grandmother's phrase you still use without knowing where it came from, the teacher who believed in you and changed the direction of a whole life. The stranger's small mercy on a bad day that you have never forgotten. These people are the stones, long since sunk, and you are one of their rings still spreading. And just so, you are a stone whose rings are already moving outward into people you know and people you will never meet, carrying something of you far past the edge of your own sight. You do not have to do anything with this tonight, but let it comfort you. The part of you that most matters, the goodness you have given, the love you have shown, the things you have taught by simply being who you are, that part has already escaped the boundary of your single life. It is out on the wide water now, moving. You could not call it back if you tried. Rest in that. You have already, quietly, without meaning to, made yourself a permanent part of the great human tide. Let the rings spread. Let yourself sink gently, like the stone, into the deep, still water of sleep, knowing that the rings go on without you, and always will. Chapter 14. What you leave in others. Let us stay by the water a little longer, because there is a tenderness here worth resting in. When Yalom sat with people near the end of their lives, one of the things that eased them most was to see clearly and specifically what they had already given, not in grand terms. Not monuments or fortunes or fame, in the small, real currency of how they had touched the people around them. He would sometimes ask a person to consider the people they had loved and to see, one by one, the mark they had left in each. Not to boast, but to witness. This one carries your sense of humor and will pass it on without ever knowing whose it was. That one learned from you how to be steady in a hard time, and will be steady one day for someone you will never meet. This child learned from watching you what it looks like to keep a promise, or to forgive, or to sit with someone in grief and not run away. These are not small things. These are, in the end, the largest things a human being transmits. And they are already transmitted, already living in the people you have shaped. There is a quiet correction here to the way we usually measure a life. We are trained to measure it in achievements, in things accomplished and acquired, in the visible record. And Yalom found that at the end, almost none of that is what matters to a person. What matters is the love given and received. What matters is who you were to the people who were near. The rest, the record of accomplishments, turns out to be scaffolding, and it falls away, and what stands revealed underneath is simply the web of human connection you were part of, the people you helped to become who they are. If you have ever feared that your life was too ordinary to have mattered, let this be a gentle answer in the dark. There is no such thing as a life that touched no one. To have been kind to a single person is to have changed the world by exactly that much, and the change does not undo itself. To have loved anyone at all is to have left something in them that outlasts you. You are not measured by the size of your name. You are measured, if you must be measured, by the warmth you added to the lives you touched, and by that measure, almost everyone has done more than they know. So let go, tonight, of the accounting. Let go of the ledger of what you did and did not achieve. It was never the real record. The real record is written in people, in the way they are a little gentler, a little braver, a little more themselves for having known you. That record is safe. It is already written. It cannot be taken back or lost. Rest in the knowledge that you have left and go on leaving exactly the thing that matters most, and that it is already out of your hands and safe in theirs. Now let your hands be empty and open on the covers, holding nothing, needing to hold nothing, and let sleep come. Chapter 15. The second given. You are free. We have spent a long, gentle while with the first of the great facts, and we have found, I hope, that it has more peace folded inside it than fear. Now let us turn slowly to the second. Yalom called it freedom, and at first that sounds like the lightest and most welcome of the four. But he saw something in it that most of us would rather not see, and it is worth understanding, because it quietly shapes a great deal of how we feel about our lives. The freedom Yalom meant is not the ordinary political kind, the freedom to speak or move or vote. It is deeper and more unsettling. It is the fact that beneath everything, there is no ground under our lives that we did not, in some sense, choose to stand on. There is no fixed design handed to us, no script we are merely reciting, no author but ourselves. We like to feel that our lives have a solid structure given from outside, that we are following a path laid down for us. And Yalom, following the existential thinkers before him, saw that this is largely a comfort we invent. In truth, we are, to a startling degree, making it up as we go. We are the authors of our own lives, and that authorship is inescapable. Even choosing not to choose is a choice. Even drifting is a decision to drift. Now, why would this be unsettling rather than thrilling? Because authorship means responsibility. If no one handed you your life, then no one else is finally to blame for its shape. The disappointments cannot be laid entirely at the door of your parents or your circumstances or your bad luck, though all of these are real and some of them are heavy. Underneath them all is the vertiginous fact that you have been, all along, the one making the choices, arranging the days, deciding what to pursue and what to let go. This is a heavy thing to hold. Yalom found that people work very hard all their lives to avoid feeling it, because it is easier to feel like a leaf carried by the wind than to feel like the one holding the pen. But here, as with death, the hard fact has a gift inside it, and the gift is large. If you are the author, then the story is not finished. If the shape of your life came, in part, from your own choices, then it can still be shaped by the choices that remain. You are not a finished object, fixed and done, a victim of everything that has already happened. You are a work still being written, and you hold the pen tonight as surely as you ever did. The same freedom that makes you responsible makes you powerful. Nothing about the way things have been obligates them to stay that way. We will explore this in the chapters ahead, gently, the way we have explored everything tonight. But let the seed of it rest in you now as something hopeful rather than heavy. You are free. Your life is yours. It was never fully written by anyone else, and it is not finished yet. There is nothing to do with this tonight, but feel the quiet dignity of it. You are the author. Set the pen down for the night. knowing you may take it up again in the morning, and that the story goes on, and that it is yours to continue. Rest now, chapter 16. The weight of having to choose. Freedom sounds like a light word, but Yalom watched it press down on people like a great stone, and it is worth understanding why, because you may recognize the weight in your own life. The weight is this: to be free to choose is also to be unable to escape choosing. Every open door is also 100 doors you did not walk through. Every path taken is 1,000 paths quietly closed. And somewhere inside us we know this, and it can make even ordinary decisions feel strangely heavy, as if each one was sealing a fate. There is an old truth here that the philosophers before Yalom saw clearly. Every choice is also a renunciation. To choose this life, this work, this person, this town, is to give up all the other lives you might have lived. And because we sense this, we sometimes freeze. We keep our options open long past the point where keeping them open costs us more than any single choice would. We stand in the doorway, unwilling to step through, because stepping through means the other doors close, and closing doors feels like a small death. Which Yalom noticed is exactly what it is connected to. The dread of choosing is a cousin of the dread of finitude. A life is finite, and so it can only be one life, not all of them. And to choose is to accept that hard and beautiful limit. But consider, in the quiet, what the alternative actually is. The person who refuses to choose, who keeps every option open forever, does not thereby get to live all the lives. They get to live none of them. They get a life spent in the doorway, which is the one place where nothing real can happen. The unchosen life is not a rich life full of possibility. It is an empty corridor. Yalom saw that the people who suffered most from the weight of freedom were not the ones who chose and lived with their choices, but the ones who could not, who hovered, who kept themselves free of every commitment and found, in the end, that they were free of every joy as well. So there is a mercy hidden in the limit. To choose one thing and let the others go is not a loss to be mourned. It is the only way a real life gets lived at all. The narrowing is the living. The person who marries one person and gives up the abstract freedom of all the others gets the one thing the perpetual bachelor of the soul never gets, which is an actual love, deep and particular and real. The renunciation is the price of the treasure, and the treasure is worth it. You do not have to choose anything tonight. Tonight is for setting choices down, not making them, but let the weight lift a little as you understand it. If you have felt the burden of your own freedom, the ache of the roads not taken, know that this ache is the shadow side of something good. It is the shadow of the fact that you actually chose, that you actually committed, that you actually lived one real life, instead of hovering forever in the doorway of 100 imaginary ones. The roads you did not take are the price you paid for the road you did. And the road you did take was real. Rest on it now. It carried you here. Chapter 17. The locked room you built yourself. Yalom often found that the walls a person felt trapped by were walls they had built themselves long ago and then forgotten building. A man would come to him convinced that his life could not change, that he was simply stuck, that circumstances had boxed him in. And gently, over time, Yalom would help him see that the box had a door and that the door was not locked from the outside. It was locked from within by his own hand with a key he had been carrying all along. This is one of the hardest and most freeing things to see about ourselves. So much of what feels like a prison is really a choice we made so long ago or so quietly that it stopped looking like a choice. We say, "I cannot," and underneath, very often, is really, "I will not," or "I am afraid to," or "I have decided not to and forgotten that I decided." We experience our own long-standing decisions as if they were laws of nature, fixed features of the world, when in fact they are habits of will that we renew silently every single day. Now, this can sound like a harsh idea, as if it were blaming a person for their own suffering, and Yalom was careful, and we should be careful too. Real walls exist. Circumstances are real, and some are cruel, and not everything is a matter of choice. He was never so foolish as to say that a person can simply decide their way out of every hardship. But he found that even within the real walls, there was almost always more room to move than the person believed. And the first step toward the room was always the same: to stop experiencing your situation as something merely happening to you, and to begin to notice the quiet ways you are participating in it, choosing it, renewing it, holding the key. Why speak of this in the dark when there is nothing to be done tonight? Because there is a deep rest in it if you take it gently. It means you are not truly trapped, however trapped you have felt. It means the situation that has weighed on you is not a sealed fate, but a standing choice. And standing choices can be reconsidered, not tonight. Tonight, you rest. But somewhere in you, as you drift off, let a small door come unlocked. Let it be enough, for now, simply to know that it is there, and that the key was always in your own hand, and that in the morning, if you wish, you may begin to use it. You are less stuck than the long night has told you. Sleep on that quiet freedom. Chapter 18. Wish, will, and the small decision. Yalom thought carefully about how change actually happens in a person, and he traced a small and useful path that runs from wishing to willing to doing. It is worth walking slowly, because it takes the enormous and frightening idea of changing your life and breaks it into steps small enough to carry. It begins with a wish. Before anything can change, a person has to be able to want, to feel a genuine desire rising up. This sounds simple, but Yalom found that many people had, over the years, lost touch even with their own wishes. They had spent so long doing what they should, what others expected, what seemed responsible, that when he asked them what they actually wanted, they went blank. The wish had been buried under a lifetime of oughts. And so the first and gentlest work was often just to help a person feel again what they truly desired, to let the buried wishes come up into the light. Then comes the will. A wish by itself is only a longing. It becomes power when it turns into a decision, an act of will, a moment where the person says, not merely I wish, but I will. This is the true hinge of change, and it is also where people most often stall, because willing is frightening. To decide is to commit, to close the other doors, to become responsible for the outcome. So we hover in the land of wishing, which is safe, and never cross into the land of willing, which is where things actually move. And then, finally, the decision has to become an act, not a grand act. Yalom emphasized this, and it matters. The decision becomes real through a small, concrete action in the actual world. A single phone call, a single sentence spoken aloud, a single step taken today in the direction of the wish. The whole enormous thing that changed life is built out of these, one small, enacted decision at a time. Why does this belong in a night meant for sleep? Because it dissolves a particular kind of pressure that keeps people awake. The pressure of feeling that to change anything, you would have to change everything all at once in some heroic leap you do not have the strength for. Yalom's quiet path says otherwise. You do not have to leap. You only have to take one small step when you are ready, and then, later, another. The life you wish for is not reached in a single desperate bound. It is reached the way any distance is crossed, one modest step at a time. So there is nothing to leap toward tonight. There is only the soft knowledge that change, when you want it, is smaller and more gradual than the fear makes it seem. A wish allowed to surface. A decision made when you are ready. A small step taken in the daylight. That is all. And none of it is required of you now. Now you may simply rest and let the wishes surface as they will, unforced, in the safe dark, asking nothing of you tonight. Chapter 19. The man who would not decide. Let me tell you a small story, the kind Yalom told, drawn from the shape of many lives rather than any single one. Picture a man in his later middle years who came to sit in that quiet room because, he said, he felt stuck, though he could not say by what. His life was comfortable. Nothing was obviously wrong. And yet he moved through his days with a low, grey heaviness, a sense that he was waiting for something that never came. As they talked, over many weeks, a pattern came into view. All his life, this man had kept his options open. He had never fully committed to a path, a person, a place, because to commit was to give up the others, and he could not bear to give up the others. He had stayed loosely in a career he did not love, because choosing to leave it and pursue what he loved might have failed, and then he would have chosen wrong. He had held people at a certain distance, because to love someone fully was to risk losing them. He had, in 100 quiet ways, declined to decide. And he experienced the result not as freedom, but as a strange grey paralysis, the very heaviness that had brought him in. What Yalom helped him see, slowly and without any pushing, was that his refusal to choose was itself the choice that had shaped his whole life. In trying to avoid the small deaths of commitment, he had been living a larger, quieter death the entire time. The open options he had guarded so carefully had never turned into anything. They had just sat there, unopened, while the years went by. And the grey heaviness was the feeling of a life not being lived, of all that unspent possibility going stale. The turning came not in a great dramatic moment, but in a small one. The man made one real decision and then acted on it in the plain daylight world. It does not matter for our purposes what the decision was. What matters is that in making it, in finally closing some doors so that one door could actually be walked through, the grey heaviness began to lift. He had rejoined the ranks of the living, the people who choose and commit, and thereby actually get to have a life, with all its risk and all its loss and all its unrepeatable richness. I tell you this in the dark, not to stir you to any decision tonight, but to leave a small, hopeful image with you as you fall asleep. If some part of your own life has felt grey and stuck and heavy, it may not be because you are trapped. It may be because somewhere you have been declining to choose, keeping a door shut against the small death of commitment, and paying for it with the larger, quieter death of a life on hold. And the way out, when you are ready, is not dramatic. It is one real decision, one small step. But that is for another day. Tonight, the man in the story is asleep, and his troubles have loosened their grip, and so may yours. Rest. Chapter 20. Responsibility without blame. There is a danger in everything we have said about freedom and choice, and Yalom was alive to it, and we should be too, gently, before we leave this room. The danger is that responsibility can curdle into blame, that a person hears, "You are the author of your life," and turns it into a whip and begins to beat themselves for every hardship, every failure, every place their life fell short of the dream. And that is not what any of this is for. It would be a cruel misuse of a liberating truth. So let us be careful and kind here in the dark. To say that you have participated in the shape of your life is not to say that you are to blame for everything that has befallen you. Terrible things happen that no one chose. Illness comes uninvited. People are born into hardship they did not make. Others fail us, wound us, abandon us, and none of that is our doing. Yalom never taught that we author our circumstances. He taught something subtler and more merciful, that within whatever circumstances we are handed, fair or unfair, we retain a measure of choice about how we meet them, what we make of them, who we become in response. That is the freedom that remains even in a life that has been unfairly treated. Not the freedom to have chosen the hand, but the freedom in how you play it. And responsibility, properly understood, is not a stick to beat yourself with. It is the opposite. It is the ground of your dignity and your hope. To take responsibility is not to say, everything is my fault. It is to say, I have a hand in what comes next. It faces forward, not backward. Blame chews endlessly on the past, on what should have been done, on whose fault it was. Responsibility turns toward the future and asks only, given where I actually am, what is mine to do now? One of these keeps you awake, grinding. The other lets you rest, because it has set down the past, which cannot be changed, and kept only the small live coal of the next possible step, which can. So if, in these chapters on freedom, some part of you started to reach for the whip, started to tally your failures, and prepare to punish yourself in the dark, set the whip down now. That was never the point. You are not on trial tonight. Yalom, who sat with so many people in their pain, was above all things compassionate, and he would be the last to hand you a reason for self-torment at 2 a.m. The truth he offers is meant to free you, not to accuse you. You have done the best you could with what you knew and what you were given, as all of us do, and you have still a hand in what comes next. Let that be enough. Let the whole court adjourn. There is no verdict to reach tonight, and no judge but the tired, kind one inside you, who is ready, now, to let you sleep. Chapter 21. The third given. You are alone. We come now to the third of the great facts, and it is a tender one, so let us approach it softly. Yalom called it existential isolation, and he was careful to distinguish it from the ordinary loneliness we all know. Ordinary loneliness is the ache of being without company, and it is cured by company, by a friend, a phone call, a warm room full of familiar people. The isolation Yalom meant is deeper, and it is not cured by company because it is not caused by the lack of it. It is the plain fact that each of us is, finally, a separate consciousness, living inside our own experience, which no one else can fully enter. Consider it gently. However close you have ever been to another person, however deeply you have loved and been loved, there has always remained a small, unbridgeable gap. You cannot pour your exact experience into another mind. You cannot make them feel from the inside what it is to be you, and they cannot do it for you either. You were born into your own separate awareness, and you will die inside it, and in between, however surrounded by love, you are the only one who lives your life from the inside. Yalom saw that this is one of the quiet sorrows at the bottom of the human condition, and that much of our reaching for others is, in part, an attempt to cross a gap that cannot be entirely crossed. Now, said plainly like that, it can sound bleak, and if you are lying awake feeling alone tonight, I do not want to deepen the ache. So let us turn it, the way we have turned every hard fact tonight, and find the gift folded inside. Because Yalom found one here too, and it is a beautiful one. The gap between two people is precisely what makes their reaching for each other meaningful. If we could simply merge, if the separation did not exist, then closeness would cost nothing and mean nothing. It is because we are separate that a true meeting between two people is such a precious and hard-won thing. The distance is what gives the touching across it its whole tenderness and worth. And there is a further comfort which we will unfold in the coming chapters. The fact that everyone shares this isolation means that at the deepest level you are not alone in being alone. Every person who has ever lived has stood inside their own separate awareness, aching, as you may be aching now, to be truly known. It is the most universal of all conditions. The very thing that seems to separate you from everyone is the thing you have most deeply in common with them. In that sense, your isolation is a door, not only a wall. It is the place where you meet every other human being who has ever been. For now, let the fact simply be here, without fear. Yes, you are, in the end, a separate soul. But you are a separate soul, among billions of other separate souls, all of them reaching, all of them aching to be known, all of them in this exact way, exactly like you. You are alone, and so is everyone, and that shared aloneness is itself a kind of company. Rest in it. You are not the only one awake in the dark tonight, holding this. You are one of countless. And that, strangely, is not lonely at all. Chapter 22. The space between two people. Let us stay tenderly with this third fact, because there is more comfort to draw from it than first appears. Yalom spent his whole working life in the space between two people, the small charged distance across a quiet room, and he came to understand that space as well as anyone ever has. And what he understood was that although the gap between two selves can never be entirely closed, it can be crossed again and again in moments of real meeting, and that these moments are among the most healing things a human being can experience. He did not believe that we are doomed to a cold isolation. He believed that we are separate, yes, but that separation is not the same as disconnection. Two people cannot merge into one, but they can turn fully toward each other and see each other and be present to each other. And in those moments, the loneliness at the bottom of things is, for a while, answered, not abolished. Answered. The gap remains, but a bridge is thrown across it, and two separate souls stand for a moment on the same span, aware of each other, no longer entirely alone. Yalom noticed that what keeps us most isolated is often not the fundamental gap at all, but the smaller walls we add on top of it, the masks we wear, the parts of ourselves we hide because we fear they would not be accepted, the careful performance of being fine. We are separate to begin with, and then, on top of that, we make ourselves more separate still by never letting anyone see who we actually are. And so his work, so much of it, was simply to help a person drop the mask in the safety of that quiet room and be seen as they truly were, and discover that being truly seen did not destroy them but relieved them, like setting down a weight they had carried so long they had forgotten it was heavy. There is something in this for you tonight. even alone in the dark. The deepest loneliness is not the loneliness of being physically alone. It is the loneliness of being unknown, of moving through your life behind a mask, of never letting anyone all the way in. And the answer to it is not simply more people. It is more truth with the people you have. It is the willingness, sometime in the daylight, with someone you trust, to let the mask come down a little, to be seen as you actually are. Yalom found that this, more than anything, dissolves the ache. To be known, even by one person, even a little, is to have the gap bridged, and the bridging is what we are all underneath reaching for. You do not have to bridge anything tonight. Tonight, you are simply here in the dark, and that is allowed, and it is enough. But let the hope of it warm you as you drift. Somewhere there are people who could know the real you if you let them, and being known by them when you are ready is the thing that answers the loneliness. It was always available. It is available still. The gap is real, but it is crossable, and it has been crossed by every pair of souls who ever truly met. Rest in the knowing that you, too, can be met. Chapter 23. Love that does not use the other. Yalom thought a great deal about love, and he drew a distinction that is worth holding gently in the dark, because it quietly explains a lot of the pain that passes between people who are supposed to care for each other. He distinguished between a love that reaches out to the other for what the other can provide, and a love that turns toward the other simply for their own sake, delighting in their being, wanting their flourishing even when it costs us something. The first kind of love, the needy kind, is not evil, and we all begin there, and we all fall back into it. It is the love that wants the other to fill our emptiness, to soothe our fear, to reassure us, to make us feel less alone. There is nothing shameful in it. It is human. But Yalom saw that when love stays only this, it slowly consumes what it feeds on. Because a love that is really about my needs is not truly seeing you at all. It is seeing you as a means to my comfort. And people can feel this, even when it is not spoken. They can feel the difference between being cherished and being used, even lovingly used, and something in them quietly withdraws. The second kind of love is rarer and harder and more beautiful. It is the love that actually sees the other person in their full reality as a separate being with their own inner life, their own longings, their own path, and that wants good things for them for their own sake, not for what it gets in return. Yalom, borrowing from the thinkers he loved, called this the love that is care rather than need. It is the love of a parent who wants the child to become fully themselves, even if that means the child grows away. It is the love between two people who help each other flourish rather than clutch each other to fill a void. It does not use the other, it honors the other. Why speak of this at bedtime? Because there is a deep peace in it, and because it connects to the loneliness we spoke of. The needy love, for all its intensity, actually deepens isolation, because it never really meets the other person, only a reflection of its own hunger. The caring love is the one that truly bridges the gap, because it begins by seeing the other as they really are, And here is the gentle turn. To love in this fuller way, you have to be yourself, a little less starved, a little less desperate to be filled. Which is why all the work we have done tonight, the loosening of fear, the softening of the grasping, matters here too. The calmer and more whole you become in yourself, the more you are able to love others for their own sake, and the less lonely, paradoxically, you become. So let this be a tender thought to hold as you sink towards sleep. Think of someone you love, and for a moment, let your feeling for them be purely a wish for their good, their peace, their flourishing, asking nothing back. Feel how that kind of loving is itself a kind of rest, a turning outward that quiets the anxious inward pull. You do not need them to fill you tonight. You can simply, quietly wish them well. And in wishing them well, freely, for their own sake, you touch the very thing that answers isolation, the real meeting of one soul with another. Let that warmth be around you now. Let it hold you as you let go of the day and drift. Chapter 24. Being seen without being fixed. There is a particular kind of comfort that Yalom prized above almost any technique, and it is one of the simplest things in the world, though we are strangely bad at it. It is the comfort of being seen without being fixed. Of having another person turn toward you and truly take in what you are going through, and not immediately try to solve it, or argue you out of it, or hand you advice, but simply be with you in it. He came to believe that this presence, this willingness to accompany rather than to repair, was often more healing than any clever intervention. Think of how rare it actually is. When you tell someone your trouble, how often do they truly just receive it? Usually, and often out of love, they rush to make it better. They offer solutions. They tell you it is not so bad. They compare it to something worse. They try kindly to talk you out of your own feeling because your pain makes them uncomfortable and they want it to stop. And you are left, underneath their good intentions, still essentially alone with the thing, because no one has simply sat down inside it with you. Yalom understood that what we most need in our deepest troubles is not to be fixed, it is to be joined. To have someone say, in effect, I see this, I am here, you are not alone in it, and to leave it at that. This is the heart of what he tried to offer across all those years in the quiet room. Not primarily answers, presence. A steady, unfrightened companionship in the face of the very things that most frighten us. He believed that the healing came less from anything he said and more from the simple fact of two people looking together without flinching at what was true. To be accompanied into the dark rather than lectured about it from the doorway changes the dark. It is still dark, but you are not alone in it, and that changes everything. And here is the tender thing to carry into sleep. You can offer this to others, and you can also, in a quiet way, offer it to yourself. So much of our nighttime suffering comes from the inner voice that will not simply sit with us, that rushes instead to fix, to scold, to solve, to argue us out of what we feel. What if, tonight, you offered yourself the other thing? What if, instead of trying to fix the feeling of the passing years or argue yourself out of the ache, you simply let yourself be seen by yourself with kindness? Here I am, feeling this. I am not going to fix it or fight it. I am just going to keep myself company in it, gently, the way a good friend would. That inner accompaniment is a real balm. It is the thing Yalom gave to others, and it is the thing you can give to yourself right now in the dark. Not fixing, just being with. Feel how the feeling softens when it is no longer being battled. Feel how you settle when you are simply, kindly accompanied. Rest there in your own good company. Chapter 25. The Fellow Traveller. Yalom had a phrase that gathered up much of his view of the human situation, and it is a warm one to carry into the deep part of the night. He said that we are all, in the end, fellow travellers. Patient and doctor. Teacher and student. Stranger and stranger. All of us are making the same journey, through the same brief span, toward the same horizon, and none of us has a special exemption or a secret map. He refused the idea that the helper stands above the helped, cured and complete, dispensing wisdom to the wounded. No, he said, we are all wounded. We are all afraid, we are all making it up as we go, doing our best with the same hard facts. The only difference between us is which stretch of the road we happen to be walking, and how honestly we are willing to speak about it. This is a deeply leveling and deeply comforting idea. It means that the people you have looked up to, the ones who seem to have it all figured out, were quietly carrying the same fears you carry. The confident, the accomplished, the serene, all of them lay awake, sometimes holding the same great facts you are holding tonight. Yalom, who sat with so many people behind their public masks, knew this better than anyone. Underneath the performances, we are all remarkably alike. All of us are small, mortal, uncertain creatures, doing our best to be brave, longing to be known, frightened of the dark, and reaching, always reaching, for a little warmth and a little meaning before the light goes out. There is enormous relief in this if you let it in. So much of our suffering has an extra layer on top of it, the layer that whispers, everyone else is fine, only you are struggling, only you are afraid, something is uniquely wrong with you. And it is not true. It was never true. The person you envy is afraid. The person who seems to sail through life is holding, in private, the same weights you hold. You are not the broken one in a world of the whole. You are one traveller among all the travellers, carrying the ordinary human burden which everyone carries, which is heavy for everyone, and which no one escapes. So take your place tonight in the great company of fellow travellers. All over the world, in this same dark hour, countless others are lying awake as you are, holding the passing of time, missing someone, wondering what it all meant, reaching for rest. You are surrounded, though you cannot see them, by a vast and silent fellowship of people exactly like you, walking exactly the same road. You have never been as alone as the night told you. You are one of an enormous, tender, invisible multitude, and every one of them, if they could, would reach out a hand and say, I know, I am here too. Rest now. We are all going the same way, and there is no shame in being tired. Let that fellowship hold you. Let it carry you gently down into sleep among your countless companions, none of you alone. Chapter 26. The fourth given. The silence of meaning. We come now to the last of the four great facts, and it is the one that many people find in the middle of the night, the heaviest of all. Yalom called it meaninglessness, though that word is harsher than what he actually meant, so let us handle it with care. The fact is this: the universe does not arrive with a meaning stamped upon it. It does not tell us what we are here for. It does not hand each of us a purpose the way a factory hands a part its function. We find ourselves alive, conscious, capable of asking what it is all for, in a cosmos that returns no answer. And this silence, when we notice it, can be one of the loneliest experiences a person can have. The question tends to come, as so many of these things come, in the quiet. What is the point of it all? Why any of this? If the years pass and then it ends, what was the purpose of the striving, the working, the loving, the whole long effort? And when we listen for the universe to answer, to hand down the meaning from on high, we hear nothing, just the silence of the stars, the indifference of the vast dark, no voice, no reason given. Yalom knew this silence intimately, and he did not pretend it away. He was too honest for that. He did not offer a cosmic answer he did not believe in. But here is where Yalom did something quietly brilliant. And it is the thing that turns this fourth fact, like all the others, from a source of despair into a source of freedom. He noticed that the silence of the universe, the lack of a given meaning, is not the same as the absence of meaning altogether. It only means that the meaning is not handed to us from outside. It does not mean there is no meaning to be had. It means rather that we are the ones who get to make it, or find it, or grow it within our own lives. The universe does not assign us a purpose, but it leaves us free to create one, and a meaning we create and live is no less real, no less nourishing than one handed down would have been. Perhaps it is more real because it is truly ours. Think of it this way, gently, in the dark. If a great voice from the sky had told you at your birth exactly what your life was for, you would have spent your days executing an assignment, living out someone else's plan. Instead, the silence gave you something else, something harder but finer. It gave you the freedom and the responsibility to decide through how you live what your life will have meant. The blank was not an insult. It was a gift of authorship, the same gift we found hidden inside freedom. The universe did not fail to give you a meaning. It honored you with the task of making one. So do not be crushed tonight by the silence if you have heard it. The silence is not the last word. It is the open space in which your own answer gets to be written. We will explore in the next chapters how meaning is actually found, and it turns out to be nearer and simpler than the enormous cosmic question suggests. But for now, let the silence of the stars be, for once, not a source of dread, but a kind of spaciousness. No one has told you what your life is for, which means no one can take that decision away from you. It is yours. It has always been yours. Rest in the quiet, which is not empty after all, but full of room. Your room. Sleep now, in the space that was left open just for you. Chapter 27. Why? What is it all for? Cannot be answered head-on. Yalom noticed something curious about the great question of meaning, and it is worth understanding because it saves a person a great deal of futile struggle in the dark. He noticed that the question, what is the meaning of it all, when you attack it directly, head-on, tends to yield nothing but anguish. You can lie awake for hours demanding that the universe justify itself, insisting on a reason for everything, and the harder you press, the emptier the answer, until you feel you are staring into a void. The direct assault on the question of meaning almost always fails. And yet, he observed, people find meaning all the time. Not by answering the question, but by living in a certain way, so that the question quietly stops needing to be asked. He compared it, borrowing an insight from other thinkers, to certain experiences that vanish the moment you pursue them directly. Happiness is like this. If you chase happiness head-on, demanding it, checking constantly whether you have it yet, it flees. But engage yourself fully in something you care about, and happiness arrives quietly as a side effect when you are not looking. Meaning, Yalom saw works the same way. It cannot be seized by frontal assault. It can only be received sideways, as a byproduct of a life lived with engagement and care. This is a great practical mercy, and it eases a very particular kind of suffering, because the person who lies awake tormented by the meaning of life is often making an honest but hopeless mistake. They are trying to think their way to an answer, to solve meaning like a problem, to arrive at a formula that will finally satisfy. And it does not work, and cannot work. And so they conclude that there is no meaning, when really they have only discovered that meaning is not the kind of thing you get by demanding it. The failure is not a failure of the universe. It is a failure of the method. So if you have spent nights interrogating existence, demanding that it explain itself, and coming up empty and frightened, let yourself off the hook tonight. You were using the wrong tool. Meaning is not found by cross-examining the cosmos at 2 a.m. It is not out there waiting to be deduced. It is made quietly in the living of engaged and caring days, and it settles on you from the side, when you have stopped demanding it and simply given yourself to something real. The question that has tormented you is one that dissolves not by being answered, but by being lived past. There is nothing to solve tonight, then. You may lay down the great question entirely. You do not have to arrive at the meaning of your life before you are allowed to sleep. In fact, you cannot arrive at it that way at all. It comes, if it comes, in the daylight, through engagement, through care, through the plain activity of a life turned toward things and people it loves. And it comes without being summoned, so stop summoning it. Let the question rest, unanswered and harmless, in the corner of the room, and turn your attention instead to the simple fact of your own breathing, which asks nothing and means everything. Rest. Chapter 28. Engagement. The side door to meaning. If meaning cannot be seized through the front door of the great question, how is it actually found? Yalom's answer, gathered from a lifetime of watching people live and suffer and heal, was simple and almost humble. Meaning is found through engagement, through throwing yourself wholeheartedly into the living of your life, into the things and the people and the work you care about, until the question of meaning quietly answers itself by no longer being asked. Engagement is the side door through which meaning enters, always when the front door stays locked. He watched this over and over. The people who felt their lives were meaningful were almost never the ones who had worked out a satisfying philosophy of meaning. They were the ones who were engaged, absorbed in their work, devoted to the people they loved, caught up in a cause, a craft, a garden, a grandchild, a project larger than themselves. They were too busy living to interrogate life, and precisely because of that, life felt meaningful to them. The meaning was not a conclusion they had reached. It was a quality that suffused their days, because their days were full of committed care. This is worth understanding deeply, because it points the way out of the pit that the great question can dig. When a person feels their life is empty of meaning, the instinct is to withdraw, to sit and brood and try to think the emptiness away. And this is exactly backward. Brooding on the emptiness deepens it. The way out is not further into more thought. It is outward, into engagement, into some concrete act of care or creation, however small. Yalom would gently steer people not toward better answers about meaning, but toward richer involvement in living, knowing that the meaning would follow, sideways, unbidden, the way warmth follows a fire you have simply decided to build. What engages you? It does not have to be grand. Yalom found meaning to be a deeply ordinary thing, hiding in plain sight, the care of another person, the making of something with your hands, the pursuit of understanding for its own sake, the tending of a small patch of the world, a home, a friendship, a piece of work done well, the devotion to a cause larger than yourself. Any of these, entered fully, generates the very meaning that the abstract question could never deliver. The meaning of life turns out not to be a riddle to be solved, but a way of being to be lived. And the way is engagement, wholehearted, particular, given to real things in the real world. You do not have to engage anything tonight. Tonight is for rest, and rest is its own kind of participation in life, the necessary counterpart to engagement, the tide going out so that it can come in again. But let the quiet reassurance settle over you. Your life is not meaningless just because the great question returns no answer in the dark. The meaning was never going to come from the answer. It comes from the living, and you have been living all along, engaged in 100 things you cared about, and every one of them has been quietly depositing meaning into your days, whether you noticed or not. Tomorrow you will engage again. Tonight you rest. And both of these, the engagement and the rest, are how a meaningful life is actually made. Sleep now. Chapter 29. The rose that does not ask why it blooms. There is an old image that Yalom appreciated, and it makes a soft resting place for the mind. So let us lie in it a while. Consider a rose. It grows, and it opens, and it releases its fragrance into the air, and it does all of this without once asking why. It does not demand to know the purpose of its blooming before it will bloom. It does not lie awake in the garden interrogating the universe about the meaning of roses. It simply is what it is, fully, and in being fully what it is complete. Its meaning is not somewhere else, in some justification it must earn. Its meaning is in the blooming itself. The old mystics and poets used this image to point at a way of being that we, with our restless, questioning minds, have mostly lost. The rose does not live for the sake of some future reward that will make its existence worthwhile. It does not defer its being to a someday when the point of it all will finally be revealed. It lives now completely, and that completeness is the whole point. There is a kind of wisdom in the rose that all our anxious cleverness cannot reach, and it is the wisdom of a thing that has stopped demanding a reason and simply, wholeheartedly, is. Now, we are not roses. We are cursed and blessed with the questioning mind, and we cannot and should not pretend it away. But we can learn something from the rose about how heavy we have made our own existence by insisting that it justify itself before we will consent to enjoy it. So much of our suffering comes from living perpetually at a distance from our own lives, standing back, arms folded, demanding that existence prove its worth before we will agree to be present in it. And meanwhile, the actual life, the blooming, is happening right now, unattended, while we stand in judgment over it. What would it be to let yourself, just for tonight, be a little more like the rose? Not to abandon meaning, but to stop demanding it as a precondition for rest. To let this breath be enough. To let this quiet be enough. To let the simple fact of your own being here, now, in the dark, be complete in itself, needing no justification, the way the rose's blooming needs none. You do not have to earn your place in existence tonight. You do not have to solve the point of yourself before you are allowed to rest. You are here, you are breathing. That, tonight, is enough, and it is complete, and it asks nothing further of you. Feel yourself then as something that is simply quietly being, the way everything in the natural world is simply being, without argument, without justification, without the exhausting demand for a reason. The tree does not justify itself. The river does not justify itself. The stars do not justify themselves. And tonight, neither must you. Let the questioning mind rest at last. Let yourself be fully and without reason, like the rose in the dark garden, complete in your own quiet existence. There is nothing to prove. There is only this being, here, now, enough. Rest in it, bloom quietly in the dark, and sleep. Chapter 30. The things that pull you out of yourself. Yalom noticed that some of the most healing experiences in a life are the ones that pull us out of ourselves, out of the anxious, self-preoccupied core where so much of our suffering lives. When we are absorbed in something beyond the self, caught up in a piece of work, lost in the care of another, moved by a piece of music, held by the beauty of the world, the endless churning of the worried self falls quiet, and we are, for a while, at peace. He saw that this self-forgetting is not a loss, but a relief, one of the deepest reliefs available to a human being. Think of the times you have felt most at peace. Very often they were times when you were not thinking about yourself at all, absorbed in helping someone, lost in a task that fully engaged your hands and mind, struck silent by a sunset, or a piece of music, or the face of someone you love. In these moments, the anxious self, with all its calculations and comparisons and fears, simply goes quiet, because your attention has been captured by something outside it. And in that quiet, there is a rest deeper than any you can reach by turning further inward. The self cannot soothe the self by staring at itself. It is soothed by being drawn out into care, into beauty, into work, into love. This is why Yalom and the wise before him so often pointed away from the self as the road to peace with the self. The person consumed by anxiety is told again and again in our time to look within, to attend endlessly to their own inner states. And there is a place for that. But Yalom knew that there is also a trap in it, that the self, endlessly examining the self, can become a hall of mirrors, a deepening spiral of self-preoccupation that only tightens the very knot it means to loosen. The surer road often is outward, to give yourself to something, to let your attention be captured by a world that is vast and interesting and full of others who need you, and beauty that asks nothing but to be beheld. Here, in the dark, this offers a gentle redirection. If you have spent this night turned inward, examining your fears, circling your own mind, perhaps the rest you are seeking lies in the opposite direction. Not in solving the self, but in gently releasing your grip on it. Let your attention drift outward, away from the anxious center. Feel the room around you, the house, the neighborhood, the sleeping world, the enormous turning earth, the stars beyond it, the whole vast being of things going on quietly without any need for your supervision. Let yourself be a small and restful part of something immense, rather than the anxious center of a small and effortful world. There is deep peace in ceasing to be the center. The self is a tiring thing to carry when you carry it as the whole point of everything. Set it down. Let the world be large, and let yourself be a small, easy part of it, held by it, not responsible for it. Feel how the churning quiets when you stop staring at it. Feel how you rest when you are drawn gently out of yourself into the great calm being of the world that is holding you right now and always was. Sleep out there in the wide quiet rather than in here in the narrow effort. Let go and be carried. Chapter 31. The two kinds of regret. Yalom paid close attention to regret because it is one of the things that most torments people in the second half of life, and especially in the dark. And he came to see that there are, broadly, two kinds of regret, and that they are not equal, and that understanding the difference can ease a great deal of unnecessary pain. There is regret for the things we did, and there is regret for the things we did not do. And it is almost always the second kind that haunts a person most. Regret for what we did, our mistakes, our failures, the things we wish we had done differently, is real, and it can sting, but Yalom found it tended to soften over time. We understand, eventually, that we did what we did with the knowledge and the fears we had then. We forgive ourselves, slowly, for having been human, for having stumbled, for having learned the hard way. The mistakes, however painful, were at least part of a life actually lived. And there is a strange peace in having lived it, errors and all. But the other regret, the regret for what we did not do, tends to have no such softening. The love we did not declare, the risk we did not take, the path we were too afraid to walk, the person we might have become if we had been braver. This regret does not fade, because it points not at something we did badly, but at something that never happened at all, a whole unlived possibility, standing forever just out of reach, never to be tried now. Yalom saw that at the end of life it is this regret, the regret of the unlived, that weighs heaviest on people, not, "I wish I had not done that," but "I wish I had lived more, dared more, loved more, openly, held back less." And here is why this matters tonight, and why it is, in the end, a hopeful teaching and not a mournful one. The two kinds of regret point in opposite directions for the time you still have. If the regret that haunts is the regret of the unlived, then the way to protect your future self from it is not to be more careful, not to hold back more, not to keep more safely to the walls. It is the opposite. It is to live a little more fully, to dare a little more, to speak the love and take the risk and walk the path, so that you accumulate fewer of the regrets that do not heal. The lesson of regret, rightly heard, is not be careful. It is be brave, while there is still time. You do not have to be brave tonight. Tonight, you rest. But let the teaching settle in gently as encouragement rather than reproach. Whatever unlived thing you may have brooded over in the dark, know that the answer to it is not more self-punishment, but more life, and that there is still life ahead of you in which to have it. The regret you fear most is the one you can still, starting tomorrow, in small ways prevent, simply by living a little more openly than you did before. That is a hopeful thing to carry into sleep. Not, I have left too much unlived, but there is living still to do, and I intend gently to do it. Rest now, and let tomorrow be one small day more fully lived than the one before. Chapter 32. The Examined Night. There is an old saying, older than Yalom by more than 2,000 years, that the unexamined life is not worth living. It is a noble saying, and there is truth in it, but Yalom, who spent his life helping people examine their lives, also understood its shadow, because there is such a thing as too much examination, especially in the dark. There is a way of turning the searchlight of self-scrutiny on yourself so relentlessly, so harshly at 3 a.m, that it becomes its own kind of torment and does not illuminate anything but only burns. So let us make a gentle distinction tonight, one that Yalom would have appreciated. There is examining and there is interrogating. To examine your life is to look at it with interest and honesty and a certain kindness, the way a good friend might, curious about how you came to be who you are, wanting to understand, ready to forgive. To interrogate your life is to put it on trial, to demand that it account for its every failure, to circle the same regrets and shortcomings again and again, extracting no new understanding, only fresh pain. The first is a lamp, the second is a whip. And the dark hours, when we are tired and defenseless, are when the lamp most easily turns into a whip. The examined life is worth living, but the endlessly interrogated night is not worth suffering, and it does not even do the work it pretends to do. You do not arrive at wisdom about yourself by lying awake accusing yourself. Wisdom comes in gentler light, in reflection undertaken with rest behind it and kindness within it. The harsh nocturnal tribunal produces no insight, only exhaustion, and it mistakes the exhaustion for depth. Yalom, for all his commitment to looking honestly at hard things, was above all a compassionate man, and he did not believe that healing came through cruelty, least of all cruelty turned against oneself. So, if this night has become an interrogation, call it off. You are allowed to. The examining can wait for the daylight when you are rested and can do it kindly. The dark is not the courtroom you have been treating it as. There is no session tonight. The judge has gone home. The searchlight can be switched off, and in its place a small, warm lamp, just enough to see by, just enough to keep you company, casting no harsh shadows, accusing no one. Let the examining be done, tonight, with the softest possible touch, or not at all. You have looked honestly at a great deal already in these hours, at death and freedom and isolation and meaning, and you have done it bravely and well. That is enough examination for one night, and it was done kindly, which is the only way it does any good. Now let the mind that has worked so hard be released from duty. It does not have to solve you tonight. It does not have to reach a verdict on your life. It has done enough. Let it rest. as you are resting in the gentle dark. Off duty at last. The trial adjourned, the whip set down, only the small kind lamp still glowing, and even that soon going quietly out. Sleep. Chapter 33. What Nietzsche might have said to a sleepless man. Yalom was not only a doctor, but a storyteller, and among the stories he wrote was an imagined one, a novel, in which he pictured a meeting that never actually happened. He imagined the fierce and lonely philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche coming in secret to be treated for his despair by a doctor of the mind in the Vienna of long ago. It is fiction, invented, a thought experiment given flesh. Nietzsche never sat in such a room, but Yalom used the invented meeting to explore, through story, how the ideas of that most intense of philosophers might actually help a suffering soul. And some of what he drew out is worth carrying into the dark, so long as we remember that the encounter is a fable, a way of thinking, and not a piece of history. Nietzsche was a real philosopher, and his real ideas, whatever their fire, contained a strange medicine for exactly the kind of night you may be having. He was preoccupied, as you have been tonight, with the question of how to say yes to a life that ends, a life full of suffering and loss and things that cannot be undone. And his answer was not to look away from the hardness, but to embrace the whole of one's life so completely, so wholeheartedly, that one would be willing to live it again exactly as it was. He gave this a name. He called it, roughly, the love of one's fate. Not mere acceptance, gritted and grudging, but a full embrace, a yes said to the entire shape of a life, its sorrows included, because the sorrows too were part of the one and only life that was actually yours. This is a demanding idea, and I do not offer it as a demand tonight, only as a distant light to look toward. But there is something in it that eases, even from far off, because so much of our nighttime suffering is a quiet war against our own lives. We lie awake, wishing this had been different, that had not happened, the years had gone another way. We refuse, in 1,000 small ways, to accept the life we actually had. And Nietzsche's medicine, harsh and bracing as it is, points toward a different possibility. What if you could, someday, look at the whole of your life, the good and the hard, the triumphs and the failures and the losses, and say gently, yes, this was mine. This was my one life, and I will not spend it at war with it. I will instead embrace it, all of it, as the only life there was ever going to be. You do not have to reach that yes tonight. It is the work of years, and Nietzsche himself, poor and brilliant and suffering, reached for it more than he grasped it. But you can turn your face toward it, the way you might turn toward a warmth in the distance. You can let go, a little, of the war against your own past. You can stop for tonight, insisting that your life should have been other than it was. It was what it was. It was yours. And there is a deep rest, deeper than any argument, in ceasing to fight the life you actually lived and beginning, softly, to embrace it. Let the war end for the night. Say a small yes to your own life, exactly as it has been, and feel the peace that comes when you stop struggling against what cannot be changed and was, after all, your own. Rest in that yes, sleep in it. Chapter 34. The eternal return as a test, not a threat. Let us stay a moment with one of Nietzsche's strangest and most useful ideas, the one Yalom found so rich that he built a story around it. Nietzsche asked his readers to imagine a thought. Imagine that you were told you must live your life over again, exactly as it has been, every detail the same, every joy and every sorrow, endlessly, forever. He called it the eternal return. And he did not mean it, mainly, as a claim about how the universe works. He meant it, above all, as a test, a way of measuring how you feel about your life. Would the thought crush you, or would you welcome it? If the thought of living your exact life again fills you with horror, Nietzsche suggested, then that horror is telling you something important. It is telling you that you are not living in a way you can embrace, that something is wrong, that you are moving through your days in a manner you would not choose to repeat. And if, on the other hand, the thought could ever fill you with something like joy, if you could ever say, yes, I would live this again, then you would have reached the deepest possible peace with your existence. The eternal return, then, is not a threat hanging over you. It is a question the philosopher hands you, a mirror, a way of asking, gently and fiercely at once, are you living a life you could bear to love? Now, most of us, most of the time, could not say a wholehearted yes, and that is not a failure, it is simply honest. But the value of the thought is in the direction it points. It suggests that the aim of a life is to move slowly toward a way of living you would not dread to repeat. And that reframes everything. It means the goal is not to accumulate more, or achieve more, or impress more. The goal is to live in a way that, looked at clearly, you could embrace. To spend your days on what you would choose again. To be, as much as you can, in a life you could say yes to. And here is the quiet mercy of it for tonight. The test is not asking whether your past was perfect. It could not have been. No one's is. It is asking, softly, what you want the days ahead to be made of. And that is a question full of hope, because the days ahead are not yet written. You can begin, in small ways, to fill them with more of what you would choose again and less of what you would dread to repeat. You can begin to build, one day at a time, a life a little more worthy of a yes. But not tonight. Tonight, the test can rest, along with everything else. You do not have to pass it now. You only have to let its gentler meaning settle over you, which is simply this: your life is worth living well, worth living in a way you could embrace. And you have time still to move in that direction, one gentle day after another. For now, though, lay the great test down. This particular night, this breath, this quiet, this rest is one you could welcome back 1,000 times. It is a good moment, this one. Let it be enough and repeatable and dear, and sleep in it. Chapter 35. Schopenhauer and the Cure of Company. Yalom wrote another novel Another imagined story, and this one drew on the gloomiest of all the great philosophers, Arthur Schopenhauer, who taught that life is largely suffering, driven by a blind and restless craving that can never be satisfied. In Yalom's story, which is fiction, invented for the purpose, he imagined a man very like Schopenhauer in temperament, brilliant and isolated, and convinced he needed no one, brought into the warmth of a small group of people meeting together to help one another. And the heart of the story is what such a man discovers when, against all his philosophy, he is finally drawn into genuine human connection. We should be careful here, as with the last story. The real Schopenhauer lived long ago and was, by most accounts, a difficult and solitary man, and his philosophy was genuinely dark. Yalom did not pretend otherwise, and neither will we. But Yalom used the imagined character to explore a conviction he had earned over a lifetime, which is that even the most isolated and self-sufficient among us are healed in the end, not by cleverer ideas, but by connection. That the brilliant loner who has built an entire philosophy to justify his solitude is still, underneath, a human being who needs to be met and who is transformed when at last he lets himself be. This connects to everything we have touched tonight about isolation. Schopenhauer, in Yalom's telling, represents the part in all of us that decides, out of woundedness, that it is safer to need no one, to stand apart, to armor the heart against the risk of others. And it is a real temptation, and it can look like strength, and it can even dress itself up as wisdom. But Yalom believed, and showed through his story, that it is finally a kind of hiding, and that the way out of the deepest loneliness is not a better argument for being alone, but the frightening, healing experience of letting others in. There is a gentle word in this for anyone who has, over the years, quietly closed the doors, who has been hurt and drawn the armor tighter, and come to prefer the safety of distance to the risk of closeness, who has perhaps built, like the philosopher, a whole justification for it. Yalom's quiet insistence, across all his work, is that it is not too late for such a person, and that the connection they have armored themselves against is the very thing that would heal them. The cure for the isolation is not more isolation, however well defended. It is the slow, brave reopening of the heart to others. You do not have to open anything tonight, but if some part of you has grown solitary and armored over the years, let this be a soft reassurance in the dark. The distance is not your fate. The armor is not who you are. Underneath it is the same human creature who longs, as everyone longs, to be met and known and warmed by others. And that longing is not a weakness to be overcome, but a truth to be honored in its own time, gently, when you are ready. For now, simply feel that you are not as alone as the armor pretends, and that the world is full of others who would meet you if you let them, and rest in the quiet company of that possibility. Sleep now. Chapter 36. A place to stand. After all this talk of great facts and great philosophers, let us come back down, gently, to something small and near and steady. Because Yalom, for all his engagement with the largest questions, was above all a practical healer, and he knew that a person cannot live in the vast abstractions. A person needs a place to stand. a small, solid patch of ground in the present moment, from which the enormous questions can be held without being crushing. He found that when people were overwhelmed by the immensity of it all, by death and meaning and the silence of the universe, the way back to peace was almost always to bring them down out of the vast abstract sky into the concrete here and now, into this room, this breath, this actual moment with its actual small contents. Because the great facts, however true, are not happening to you right now. Right now, you are lying in a bed. Right now, you are breathing. Right now, you are warm or you are cold. But you are here in a particular place, in a particular body, in a single present moment. And that present moment is almost always more bearable, more peaceful than the vast imagined future the anxious mind conjures. This is one of the oldest pieces of wisdom, and Yalom knew it well. Nearly all of our suffering lives in time other than now. It lives in the remembered past, in regret. It lives in the imagined future, in dread. The present moment itself, the actual now, is nearly always manageable. Right now, in this actual instant, you are not dying. You are not failing. You are not alone in any acute way. You are simply here, breathing, in a bed, in the dark, safe. The catastrophe is always somewhere else. In some other time, the now is almost always all right. So let the great questions rise back up into the sky where they belong, high and slow and distant, and bring your feet down onto the small, solid ground of this present moment. You do not have to solve death tonight, because you are not dying tonight. You do not have to resolve the meaning of your entire life tonight, because tonight your only task is to rest. Shrink the world gently from the vast and terrifying whole down to the small and manageable now. This breath, this weight of your body on the bed, this quiet, this is your place to stand, and it is solid and it is enough. Feel how much lighter the night becomes when you stop trying to carry all of time at once. You were never meant to hold the entire span of your existence in your two hands at 3 a.m. You were only ever meant to live one moment at a time, and this moment, the one you are actually in, is a good and quiet and safe one. Stand here, on this small, firm ground of now. Let the rest of time take care of itself. There is nowhere you have to be but here, and here is peaceful. Rest in the here, sleep in the now. Chapter 37. The Here and Now. Yalom placed enormous value in his work on what he called the here and now. In the quiet room, he found that the most powerful moments were not when a patient recounted the distant past or theorized about the future, but when something real happened between the two of them, right there in the present, in the actual living moment of their meeting. He believed that the present moment is where all real change and all real contact and all real healing occur, and that our habit of living everywhere but the present is one of the quiet tragedies of a human life. Consider how rarely we are actually here. We eat a meal while thinking of the next task. We sit with the loved one while half our mind is elsewhere. We walk through a beautiful evening rehearsing an old argument or worrying about tomorrow. The present moment, the only moment that is ever actually happening, streams past us almost entirely unattended, while we live in the ghost worlds of memory and anticipation. And then we wonder why life feels thin, why it seems to slip through our fingers, why the years vanish without our having quite lived them. It is because we were rarely there for them. We were somewhere else, in our heads, while the actual life went by. The awareness of finitude, which has kept you company tonight, has one great gift to offer here, and it is perhaps the greatest of all. It calls you back to the present. When you truly know that your moments are numbered, each one becomes suddenly precious. And preciousness is what finally holds the attention. The person who knows this evening is one of a finite number of evenings, does not squander it in distraction. They look at the light, they hear the voices, they taste the meal, they are here at last. Because they know that here is the only place life is ever actually lived, and that there is only so much of it. Mortality, rightly understood, is not the enemy of the present moment. It is what makes the present moment shine. So let the passing of time, which felt like a weight at the start of this night, become instead an invitation. An invitation to be here, now, fully, for this moment and the next and the next, because each one is rare and unrepeatable and will not come again. This breath will never happen again. This particular quiet, this exact darkness, this precise moment of rest is a one-time event in the whole history of the universe, and you are inside it right now, alive. That is not a small thing. That is the whole of it. Life is not somewhere else, in the past you regret, or the future you dread. It is here, in this moment, the one you are in. And there is deep rest in returning to the here and now, because the now, as we have seen, is nearly always peaceful. So come home to it. Come home to this breath, this bed, this dark, this moment. Stop straining after the past and the future, those two ghost countries where all the suffering lives. Set them down. Be here, in the one real country, the present, which is quiet and safe and enough. This is where your life is. This is where your rest is. Right here, right now. Sleep in the only moment there has ever been. Chapter 38. Gratitude for the ordinary evening. There is a particular quality that Yalom saw come over people who had truly absorbed the awareness of their own finitude, and it was not fear and it was not grief. It was gratitude. A deep and quiet gratitude for the ordinary, for the plain, unremarkable goodness of a normal day, which the awareness of the end had suddenly revealed as extraordinary. People who had faced the shortness of life often reported that the sweetest thing about it was not any grand experience, but the simplest ones. A morning cup of something warm, the face of a friend. The light through a window, an ordinary evening at home. We do not usually see these things. They are too familiar, too constant, too easily assumed to be permanent. We are built to notice change and to ignore the steady background. And so, the steady background of our lives, which is where nearly all the good actually lives, goes unnoticed and unthanked. It is only when we sense that it might end, that it is not guaranteed, that it will not always be, that the ordinary suddenly blazes up into preciousness. The person who knows their evenings are numbered sees at last how beautiful an ordinary evening is. And Yalom's quiet suggestion was that we do not have to wait for a crisis to see it. We can, with a little effort, learn to see it now. So let us do a little of that seeing tonight, softly, as a way towards sleep. Think back over this ordinary day, not for its problems, but for its small, unremarked goodnesses. The fact that you woke this morning at all, the warmth of your bed now, the roof over you, keeping out the weather. Whatever food you had, whatever small comforts, whatever faces you saw, whatever moments passed without pain, these are not nothing. To someone who had lost them, they would be everything. And you have them tonight, quietly, in abundance, and they are worth a moment of simple thanks before you sleep. This is not a forced or cheerful gratitude, the kind that denies the hard things. We have spent this whole night being honest about the hard things, and we will not pretend them away now. It is a deeper gratitude, one that can hold the hardness and still see alongside it the plain, persistent goodness of ordinary existence. The two live together. The life is finite and passing, yes, and also this ordinary evening was a gift, and you were here for it, and that is worth being glad of. Both are true. The awareness of the ending is precisely what lets the gratitude in. So let the last movement of your mind before you sleep be a soft and simple thankfulness. Not for anything grand, for the ordinary, for the bed that holds you, the dark that shelters you, the breath that comes and goes without your effort, the day that was whatever it held, one more day of the strange and unrepeatable gift of being alive. You had it, it was yours, and here at the end of it you are safe and warm and about to rest. That is a good ending to a day, any day, every day. Let gratitude be the last thing, warm and quiet, and carry you down into sleep. Chapter 39. Adding years or adding life. There is a distinction that runs quietly beneath everything Yalom understood about a good life, and it is worth making plain here, in the deep calm of the night. It is the distinction between adding years to your life and adding life to your years. Our whole culture is arranged around the first. We are told endlessly to extend the span, to push back the horizon, to gain more time. And there is nothing wrong with wanting more time. But Yalom knew from sitting with people at the very edge of their time that the length of a life is not what makes it feel full. What makes a life feel full is how deeply it was lived, moment by moment, not how many moments there were. He saw people with a great many years who felt at the end that they had barely lived, that the decades had streamed past in distraction and postponement and half-presence, and that the sheer quantity of their time had somehow amounted to very little. And he saw others, sometimes with far less time, who had lived their days so fully, so wholeheartedly, so present to the people and things they loved, that their lives felt rich and complete, whatever their length. The difference was not in the number of years. It was in the depth of the living. A short life, fully lived, can feel more complete than a long one spent asleep. This is a quietly liberating truth, especially for anyone who has lain awake mourning the passing of the years, counting what is gone, dreading what remains. Because it shifts the whole question. The question is not, how much time do I have left? A question you cannot answer and cannot control. The question is, how fully will I live the time I have, whatever its amount? A question entirely within your power. You cannot add years by wanting them, but you can, starting tomorrow, add life to your years. By living them with more presence, more depth, more attention to what actually matters. And that, not the raw span, is what determines whether a life feels full. There is real peace in making this shift. In the dark, the anxious counting of remaining time is a torment precisely because it fixes on the one thing you cannot control. Let it go tonight. You do not get to choose how many evenings remain, but you do get to choose tomorrow and the day after how present you are for each one, how fully you inhabit it, how much life you pour into it. And a handful of fully lived days is worth more than years of the half-lived kind. You have it in your power, always, to make your remaining time rich, whatever its length. That is the freedom that no shortness of time can take away. So set down the counting. The counting was always the wrong measure. Turn your attention gently from the length of the road to the quality of the walking, which is the only part you can actually shape. And know that you can, at any age, in any circumstance, begin to add life to your years, to live more deeply the days you have. That is a hopeful thing, and it is true, and it is available to you starting with the very next day you wake to. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, this deep rest is itself a way of living well, of honoring the body and the life you have been given. So rest fully, deeply, wholeheartedly, adding even to this quiet night the quality of a thing truly and completely done. Sleep now. Chapter 40. Making peace with the unlived. As the night deepens, let us turn to something tender. There will always be in any life a portion that goes unlived. Paths not taken, selves not become, loves not pursued, places not seen, gifts not fully used. This is not a flaw in your particular life. It is the nature of a finite life as such. Because to live one life is necessarily not to live all the others, and every road walked is 1,000 roads left behind. Even the fullest life anyone has ever lived left the vast majority of its possibilities unlived. This is simply what it is to be a single, bounded, mortal person rather than an infinite one. Yalom understood that a great deal of late-life sorrow is grief for these unlived lives, the phantom selves we might have been, and he was gentle with that grief because it is real. But he also helped people see that the unlived lives were never actually available all at once. They were alternatives, not additions. You could not have lived them alongside the one you lived. They were the price of choosing at all, and choosing is what made your actual life real rather than a permanent hovering among possibilities. The unlived lives are not a theft from you. They are the shadow cast by the one life you actually, solidly had. So there is a peace to be made tonight with all that you did not become, not by pretending you do not mourn it, but by understanding it rightly. You were one person living one life, and it was a real one, and its reality required leaving the others behind. The road you walked was made of ground, the roads you did not walk were made of mist, and always would have been, and could never all have been solid at once. To grieve them endlessly is to grieve that you were a finite creature and not an infinite one, which is to grieve that you existed at all, since only finite creatures exist. Better, gentler, to bless the one real road and let the misty others go. Let them go then, softly, tonight. All the lives you did not live, all the selves you did not become. Bless them, thank them for the longing they gave you, and release them into the dark where they belong. They were never yours to keep. What was yours to keep was this life, the actual one, the one that brought you all the way here, to this bed, this breath, this quiet. That one is real. That one is enough. Make your peace with the unlived and come home fully to the lived. Rest in the one real life that is actually yours, and let the phantoms drift away into the night, unmourned at last and quiet. Sleep, chapter 41. The kindness of limits. We think of limits as our enemies. The limit of our time, the limit of our strength, the limit of what one life can hold. We rail against them, we grieve them, we wish them away. But Yalom and the wise before him glimpse something we usually miss, which is that limits are also a kindness. That a life without any boundary would not be richer but emptier, and that the very finitude we resist is what gives our days their weight and their savour and their meaning. Consider it gently. If you had endless time, if the years stretched out without any horizon forever, would this evening be precious? It would not. It could not. It would be one of an infinite number of identical evenings worth nothing, because nothing that is infinitely available is worth anything. It is scarcity that creates value. It is the fact that our evenings are numbered that makes each one matter. The limit is not the thing that ruins the gift. The limit is the thing that makes it a gift at all. An unlimited life would be a kind of curse, a formless eternity in which nothing counted because nothing could ever be lost. So the finitude that has weighed on you tonight is seen from another angle, the very source of everything you hold dear. You love your people fiercely, partly because you will not have them forever. You savor the good moments, partly because they pass. You are moved by beauty, partly because it fades. Remove the limits, and you remove, along with them, all the intensity and preciousness and meaning they make possible. The boundary of a life is what gives the life its shape. The way the banks give the river its course, the way the frame gives the painting its form. Without the edge, there is no picture at all. This does not erase the sorrow of the limit. It only sets it inside a larger truth. Yes, it is sad. that the good things end, and also their ending is inseparable from their goodness, is part of what makes them good, is the price and the guarantee of their preciousness. To wish the limit away is to wish away the very thing that made your life worth loving. Better to make peace with the kind, hard boundary, and let it do its quiet work of making everything within it matter. So let the limit be, tonight, not an enemy but an old and severe friend, the one who, by reminding you that nothing lasts, taught you to love what you have while you have it. It has given your life all its weight. It has made this ordinary night worth being grateful for. It is not only taking things away, it is at the very same time making them dear. Rest inside the kind boundary of your life, which holds you, which shapes you, which makes you matter. Sleep held within it. Safe. Chapter 42. What the dying teach the living. Yalom spent years in the company of people who knew their time was short, and he said more than once that they were among his greatest teachers. For they had been forced to learn quickly and under pressure what the rest of us have the luxury of avoiding, and what they learned they often passed on, and it is worth receiving gently here in the dark as a gift handed down. The first thing they taught was what matters, stripped of the future, of the endless someday, forced into the present. They saw with sudden clarity what was actually important, and it was almost never what they had spent their lives pursuing. It was not the achievements, the possessions, the status, the things they had chased so hard. It was the people, the love, the simple experiences, the connection. Again and again, at the edge, the trivial fell away and the essential stood revealed. And the essential was smaller and closer and more human than they had ever realized while they were busy chasing the rest. The second thing they taught was that it is not too late until it is over. Yalom watched people make profound changes, heal old wounds, speak long withheld words of love, become more fully themselves in their very last chapter, sometimes in their very last weeks. The change that had seemed impossible for decades became possible under the pressure of the ending, which proved, he said, that it had been possible all along. The people who transformed at the end could have transformed at any point. The only thing that had been missing was the awareness that made it urgent. And that awareness is available to all of us right now without waiting for the diagnosis. So receive tonight what the dying teach. That what matters is love and connection and presence, not the striving and the accumulating. That it is never too late to turn toward what matters until it is truly over, and it is not over for you tonight. That the whole frantic architecture of getting and achieving, which keeps us awake and anxious, is revealed at the end to have been largely beside the point. The people who know are nearly unanimous about this, and they are trying, across the boundary, to tell the rest of us. And Yalom carried the message faithfully, and here it is, handed to you in the quiet. You do not have to do anything with it tonight, but let it comfort and clarify. The things that have kept you awake with worry are, very likely, not the things that will matter in the end. And the things that will matter, the love, the presence, the connection, are available to you already, tonight and tomorrow, without any striving at all. That is a great easing. Let the anxious priorities of the daylight world loosen their grip. What matters is nearer and simpler than they claim. Rest in the clarity the dying have given us, and let the rest go. Sleep. Chapter 43. Letting the day be finished. Now the night is deep, and it is time to begin gently, to let go of the day entirely. Whatever this day held, it is over now. Whatever you did, whatever you left undone, whatever went well and whatever went wrong, it is finished, sealed, beyond the reach of any further effort. There is nothing left that you can do about today. It has passed into the great store of days behind you, and it will stay exactly as it was, and no amount of turning it over in the dark will change a single thing about it. There is a deep permission in this, if you will accept it. The day is done, and being done, it asks nothing more of you. You are off duty. Whatever responsibilities the day carried, they have been set down with the day. The unfinished tasks will wait for tomorrow, and tomorrow you will have fresh strength for them, and they will be easier in the light. But tonight they are not yours. Tonight nothing is required of you. The day has released you the way a tide releases the shore as it goes out, and you are free now simply to rest. Yalom understood how much we torment ourselves by refusing to let the day be finished. We lie awake rehearsing it, editing it, wishing it had gone differently, dreading its consequences, as though our nighttime worrying could reach back and reshape what is already done. It cannot. The worrying changes nothing except to rob you of the rest you need to meet tomorrow well. It is a tax paid for no benefit, a struggle against something that is already finally over. And the release, when you allow it, is enormous. To simply say, the day is done, I did what I could, it is finished now, and I lay it down. So, lay it down. Feel yourself setting the whole day gently aside, like setting down a heavy bag you have carried since morning, at last in the doorway of sleep. Your arms are tired. You have carried it far enough. Set it down. It is not yours to carry through the night. Let it rest where it falls, and let yourself walk on, unburdened, into the dark, into the rest that is waiting for you. The day is finished. You are allowed to be finished with it. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to fix, nothing more to answer. Just this letting go, this soft release, this setting down of everything the day contained. Feel how light you become without it. Feel the ease of holding nothing. The day is over, and it was enough, and you are free. Rest now in the deep permission of a day that is fully, finally done. Sleep. Chapter 44. The softening of the fear. Notice, if you can, how the fear that may have been with you at the beginning of this night has changed. When the house first went quiet and the awareness of time came settling over you, it may have felt sharp, close, heavy, a pressure behind the breastbone, a thing to be dreaded. And now, after these long hours of gently looking at it together, of turning it over, of finding the peace folded inside each hard fact, notice how it has softened. It is still here, perhaps. But it is quieter now. It has less edge. It has become, over the course of the night, more like an old companion and less like a threat. This is what Yalom found, again and again, in his quiet room. That the great fears do not have to be conquered or banished, which is impossible, but that they can be softened, befriended, integrated, until they take their place among the other facts of a life without dominating it. The fear of finitude never disappears entirely, not for anyone, not even for the wisest. But it can shrink from a terror that fills the whole sky to a quiet awareness that simply accompanies you, the way the awareness of the horizon accompanies a traveler without stopping the journey or spoiling the view. The softening comes not from arguing the fear away, but from turning toward it, gently and repeatedly, until it grows familiar. What we refuse to look at stays huge and monstrous in the dark of our avoidance. What we turn toward, patiently, kindly, shrinks to its actual size, which is always smaller than the imagination made it. You have turned toward the hardest facts tonight, steadily, without flinching, and look, they did not destroy you. You are still here. You are calmer than when you began. The monster, looked at directly for long enough, has become something you can live beside. So trust the softening. Trust that this is how peace with the deep things actually comes, not in a single triumphant conquest, but in this quiet, repeated turning toward, night after night, until the great facts lose their power to terrify and become simply the true and manageable conditions of a human life. You have done this work tonight. You have sat with the very things that frighten people most, and you have found them bearable, even in their strange way, freeing. That is real. That softening is real, and it will still be with you in the morning, and it will deepen every time you return to it. Feel the fear, whatever remains of it, resting quietly now beside you, no longer filling the room, no longer a threat, just a familiar presence, keeping you company as you drift towards sleep. You have made your peace with it, at least for tonight, and that peace is enough. Rest in the softened dark, where nothing is as frightening as it seemed when the night began. Sleep. Chapter 45. The long perspective and the small bed. Let your mind widen for a moment, out to the largest view, and then come home to the smallest. Yalom and the philosophers he loved often found comfort in the long perspective, the vast scale of things in which our small troubles are set against the immensity of time and space and take their proper, humble, restful proportions. Think gently of how long the world was here before you, and how long it will continue after, and how you are a brief, warm, conscious spark held in the middle of that great darkness, part of it, belonging to it, one of countless sparks that have flared and will flare in the long night of time. There is a peace in this largeness when it is held rightly, not a bleak insignificance, but a restful smallness, the relief of not having to be the center of everything, of being a small and cherished part of something vast that does not depend on you and does not blame you, and holds you the way the ocean holds a single wave. Your worries, set against that immensity, grow quiet. They do not vanish, but they take their true size, which is small, which is bearable, which is nothing the great turning world cannot easily hold on your behalf. And then, having widened out to the stars, come home, all the way home, to the smallest and nearest thing, which is this bed, this body, this breath, this single warm point of rest in the enormous dark. For the great perspective is only half of the comfort. The other half is the small, near, tender fact of your own safety in this moment. You are a small spark in a vast night, yes, and also, right here, you are warm and held and safe in a small bed in a quiet room at the end of an ordinary day. Both are true, and together they make a complete piece, the vast and the intimate, the cosmos and the pillow. So let yourself be both things at once as you drift, a tiny, cherished part of an immense and ancient universe that has room for every trouble you could ever have. And a single, warm, breathing person, safe in bed, at the end of the day, needing nothing, doing nothing, simply resting. The largeness gives you perspective. The smallness gives you comfort. Between them, there is nothing left to fear and nothing left to carry. Rest in both. The great dark that holds the stars is the same great dark that holds your quiet room, and it is gentle, and it is vast enough for everything, and you are safely inside it, a small, warm spark, held. Let the immensity take your worries, which are so small, against it. Let the small bed take your body, which is so tired, and sleep, held at once by the whole universe and by the soft, familiar dark of your own room. You are safe in both. Sleep. And Chapter 46. Nothing left to solve tonight. We are near the end now, and there is almost nothing left to say, and that is exactly as it should be, because the deepest truth of this hour is that there is nothing left to solve tonight. All the great questions we have touched, death and freedom and isolation and meaning, are not problems to be solved before you sleep. They are the standing conditions of a human life, and they will still be here tomorrow and the day after, and they do not need to be resolved tonight or ever, only lived with gently, one day at a time. You may have come into this night feeling that you had to figure something out, that the weight pressing on you was a problem demanding a solution, and that you could not rest until you had found it. And the quiet truth, the one Yalom spent his life arriving at, is that these are not that kind of problem. They do not have solutions in the way a puzzle has a solution. They have only ways of being lived, and the way we have practiced tonight is the way of turning toward them gently, finding the peace folded inside each one, and then setting them down and resting, trusting that they will keep, and that you do not have to hold them every moment to keep them from crushing you. So set them all down now, the whole great weight of the ultimate things. You do not have to carry them into sleep. You do not have to solve your mortality tonight, or resolve the meaning of your life, or answer for your freedom, or heal your isolation. None of it is due tonight. None of it was ever due in a single night. These are the slow work of a whole life, done gently, in the daylight, a little at a time, and tonight your only task, your single and simple task, is to rest. Feel the relief of that. Nothing to solve, nothing to figure out, nothing due. The enormous problems you thought you had to crack before you could sleep were never solvable that way, and so you are released from the trying. You may simply lie here in the dark, holding nothing, solving nothing, being nothing but a tired person at the end of a day, allowed at last to rest. There is nothing left to do tonight. There is nothing left to solve. There is only the dark and the quiet and your own slow breathing and the deep permission to let go of all of it and sleep. Let the questions keep until morning. They will wait. They always wait. And you will meet them when you meet them, rested and gentle and unafraid. But not now. Now, nothing is asked of you but rest. Let everything else go. Sleep. Chapter 47. The quiet that was there all along, underneath everything tonight, underneath the fears and the questions and the long, slow work of looking at them, there has been a quiet. It was there when the house first went silent, though you may have heard it then as loneliness or dread. It has been there all along, beneath the noise of the worrying mind, patient, spacious, undisturbed. And now, as the mind finally begins to still, you can hear it for what it actually is. Not emptiness, not absence. A deep and gentle quiet that was holding you the whole time, waiting for you to grow still enough to notice it. This quiet is not something you have to create or achieve. It is not the reward at the end of a long effort. It is what is already there underneath the effort when the effort stops. All night the mind has been busy turning things over, and beneath all that turning, the quiet has simply been present, the way the sky is present behind the clouds, unchanged by all the weather passing across it. And now the weather is thinning, the thoughts are slowing, and the clear, quiet sky, which was always there, is beginning to show through. Yalom knew, as the contemplatives have always known, that beneath the anxious chatter of the mind there is a stillness that is our deepest nature, and that we return to it not by struggling toward it, but by simply letting the chatter subside. You do not have to reach for the quiet, you only have to stop holding on to the noise. Let the last thoughts drift by without following them. Let them thin and slow and settle, and feel underneath them, rising up to meet you, the quiet that was there all along, that has been waiting for you patiently through all the long hours of this night and all the nights before it. Rest into that quiet now. Let it hold you. It is vast and it is gentle, and it asks nothing of you. It is not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of peace, the deep, still ground of your own being, which no fear ever truly touched, which was never actually in danger, which has been here the whole time, holding you, waiting. Let yourself sink into it, the way you would sink into deep, still water, or into the arms of something that has always loved you and always will. The quiet was there all along. It is here now. It is what remains when everything else grows still. And you are almost still now, almost home, almost asleep, sinking gently into the deep, peaceful quiet that was always underneath, always waiting, always yours. Let it take you the rest of the way. Rest, rest. There is nothing here but peace. Chapter 48. Sleep as a small rehearsal for trust. There is one last gentle thought to leave you with, and then the voice will fall quiet and let you go. It is this: every night when you fall asleep, you do a small and remarkable thing. You let go. You release your grip on the day, on your worries, on your very consciousness, and you trust yourself to the dark, to sleep, to the unknown, without knowing exactly what will happen or how you will return. Sleep is, in its quiet way, a small nightly rehearsal for the great letting go, a gentle practice offered to you every single night, entrusting yourself to something larger than your own control. And you have done it thousands of times. Every night of your life you have let go into sleep, and every morning you have returned. You have practiced, without knowing it, the deep art of releasing your grip and trusting the dark to hold you. And the dark has held you night after night all your life. There is a quiet reassurance in that as we come to the end. The letting go that the anxious mind so fears is something you already know how to do. You do it nightly. You are, in fact, about to do it now. And it is not a fall into terror. It is a sinking into rest, a return to the deep quiet, a trust that has never once failed to carry you through to morning. So let this falling asleep be, tonight, a gentle practice in exactly the trust that all our talk of the great facts finally comes down to. The trust that you can let go and be held. That you do not have to grip and manage and control in order to be safe. That there is something, call it the dark, call it sleep, call it the great quiet being of the world that will hold you when you finally release your hold on it. You are about to prove it again, right now, as you sink towards sleep. You will let go, and you will be held, and you will return, gently, in the morning, as you always have. There is nothing left to do now but this: to let go, to trust the dark that has held you every night of your life, to sink softly into the deep quiet, without effort, without fear, the way you have 1,000 times before. The day is finished. The questions are set down. The fear has softened. The quiet has risen up to meet you. And now you simply let go gently into rest, held by something that has never once dropped you, trusting, as you have always secretly known how to trust, that you are safe and that you will be carried, and that morning will come. Let go now. You are held. You are safe. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to hold, nothing more to fear. Only rest, deep and gentle and complete, rising up to take you home. Sleep now.